The sun was sinking behind the jagged Sahel horizon, casting a deep orange glow over Ouagadougou's presidential compound. Inside, Ibrahim Traoré sat at a large wooden desk, his hands clasped, eyes fixed on a classified military report. The document detailed foreign military buildups in the Gulf of Guinea, fleets, bases, and joint exercises that smelled less like defense and more like preparation. His top advisors were in the room, the air thick with tension. Suddenly, the secure line on his desk rang. The operator's voice was brisk. "Mr. President, President Donald Trump on the line." Traoré nodded, picking up the receiver. Trump's voice came heavy with confidence, the kind of tone that came from decades of telling people what to do. "Ibrahim, let's get straight to it. We hear you're strengthening alliances, building defense pacts. You should know, in any battle, we'll crush you." For a moment, Traoré said nothing. He leaned back, his jaw tightening. His aides watched in silence, unsure whether he would respond with diplomacy or defiance. When he spoke, his voice was calm but edged with steel. "Then step onto the field." The line went silent for a few seconds, as if the challenge had taken Trump off guard. Then came a short laugh, the kind of laugh that didn't hide the irritation beneath. "Careful what you wish for, Ibrahim." Traoré ended the call without another word, turning to his defense minister. "If they want to test us, we'll be ready. But we won't be provoked into a war we didn't start." Outside, the evening call to prayer echoed through the city, mingling with the low hum of military trucks in the distance. In the West Wing of the White House, Trump was already meeting with his generals, plotting contingency plans. The first move had been made. Night bled into the war room like ink. A map of West Africa glowed on the wall, coastlines lit in faint blue, supply corridors traced in thin red arteries. Traoré stood with sleeves rolled, listening as his intelligence chief pointed at flickering icons in the Gulf. Carrier group repositioned. Drones staging from an Allied airstrip. Cyber probes on our grid increased at 310. The room didn't gasp, it tightened. Across the Atlantic, Trump's team choreographed pressure without calling it that. Sanctions, in review. Shipping insurers, reassessing risk. Commentators on primetime shows framed Burkina Faso as reckless. A neat stack of euphemisms building the shape of a threat. Traoré let the briefing end with a palm on the table. "We don't answer shadows with speeches," he said. "We answer with systems." Orders moved like current: decentralize comms to line-of-sight relays, harden substations with manual bypass, scatter fuel reserves, rehearse black start for the grid. In the courtyard, generators coughed to life, then cut, drills measured in seconds. By morning, a delegation from 3 Sahel states arrived unannounced, jackets dusty from the airport tarmac. In the antechamber, the Nigerian envoy spoke in a low voice: "If they isolate you, they isolate us tomorrow." The Malian minister slid a folder across the table: pre-cleared overflight paths, shared radar coverage, riverine patrol timings. Their faces held no romance, only the arithmetic of survival. The media front sharpened. A leaked clip aired of Trump saying, "We'll crush them in any battle." It landed like a gavel. In Ouagadougou, students painted walls with a single phrase in stenciled black: "Step onto the field." Mothers queued at water points, radios tucked under shawls, whispering news like prayer. In barracks, recruits tightened bootlaces, the leather speaking in creaks. That evening, Traoré stepped onto a dim balcony above the square. He didn't raise his voice. "We will not fire first. We will not fire blind. We will not fire for pride. But if we must stand, we will stand together, village and city, soldier and farmer. The field is not where we die, it is where we decide." Below, the crowd answered with a sound more felt than heard: a drum rolled from 1,000 chests. Somewhere over the Gulf, a drone camera blinked. Somewhere in a studio, a chiron sharpened. 2 clocks began to race, the one on the wall, and the one in history. The next dawn broke heavy, clouds hanging low over the city like a lid over a boiling pot. In Washington, Trump's National Security Council gathered in a closed session. The president leaned forward, elbows on the mahogany table. They think this is a game. We'll give them a taste of pressure they've never felt before. A general slid a dossier across to him, economic choke points, satellite imagery of troop movements, a timeline for escalation without declaration. Back in Ouagadougou, Traoré was already walking the barracks. Soldiers stood in formation, their rifles clean, eyes sharper than their blades. He spoke not from a podium but standing among them. They say they will crush us in any battle. That means they think the battle is theirs to start. But every field is ours, our soil, our sky, our river. His voice carried through the yard, blending with the rhythmic thud of boots hitting earth. The preparations went beyond military drills. Farmers were instructed to increase strategic grain reserves. Engineers reinforced bridges, not just for civilian travel but to withstand the weight of armored convoys. In the capital's backstreets, mechanics modified trucks into mobile supply units. Trump's media machine intensified. Headlines read, "Burkina Faso threatens stability in West Africa." Panelists speculated about regime change while maps flashed on screens. The phrase, "step onto the field," became a rallying cry in African social media, drawing mockery from Western commentators, and quiet respect from others. In the early evening, a coded message arrived from an ally in North Africa. Satellite scans showed unusual naval activity in the Gulf. Four destroyers and a support ship had altered course, their formation tight, their intentions clear. Traoré called an emergency council. The room was silent except for the scratching of pens on paper as orders were written. "If they are moving their pieces," Traoré said, "we will move ours. But remember this, the first shot will not be ours. The first step onto the field will tell the world who began this war." Outside, the sky rumbled with distant thunder, or perhaps something else. By nightfall, the city felt like a held breath. Patrols doubled along key intersections, not with aggression, but with quiet readiness. Street vendors still sold roasted maize, children still chased each other between alleys, but every adult's gaze lingered a second too long on the horizon. In the war room, Traoré's closest advisors gathered around a wide digital map. Markers moved like chess pieces, Allied forces in Mali repositioning along the border, Niger deploying mobile radar units, coastal partners increasing maritime patrols. A logistics officer reported, supply corridors hardened. Civilian evacuation routes prepared, though not yet activated. Meanwhile, in Washington, Trump's inner circle debated the optics of a show of force. Some urged caution, fearing a repeat of past foreign entanglements. Others insisted that allowing Traoré to stand unchallenged would embolden other African nations to follow his example. Trump cut through the argument with a wave of his hand. "We've already said we'll crush them. Now we make sure they believe it." Within hours, satellite images confirmed a convoy of armored vehicles moving inland from a West African port controlled by a U.S. ally. Officially, it was a joint training exercise. Unofficially, it was a message. Traoré received the intel in silence. He looked over the coordinates, then glanced at his intelligence chief. "I want eyes on that convoy, but no engagement unless they breach agreed boundaries. If they want to step onto the field, they'll have to cross the line in daylight, with the world watching." Social media in Burkina Faso exploded. Hashtags like #StepOntoTheField and #OurSoilOurRules trended regionally. Street murals appeared overnight, depicting a lion facing down a shadowy eagle, both standing on the same patch of earth. As the clock ticked toward midnight, the Sahel wind picked up, rattling the shutters of the presidential compound. Traoré walked to the balcony, looking out over the darkened city. In the distance, lightning flashed, too far to be heard, but close enough to remind him that storms often arrived without warning. The storm broke just before dawn, hammering the capital with sheets of rain. In the barracks, soldiers moved through drills in the downpour, boots sinking into the mud, rifles slick but steady in their hands. Traoré watched from under a canvas awning, the rain streaking across his field jacket. "If you can stand ready in this," he told them, "you can stand ready in anything." Far away, the convoy reported by intelligence had slowed, setting up a temporary base near a river crossing just outside Allied territory. Drones hovered above their position, sending back high-resolution images to Burkina Faso's command. The foreign insignia on the vehicles was covered in mud, deliberate, to blur identification. In Washington, Trump was briefed. "They're watching us," a general said. "They know exactly where we are." Trump smirked. "Good. Let them watch. It'll make the fall harder." By midday, the rain cleared, and the streets of Ouagadougou returned to their rhythm, almost. Market chatter carried whispers of foreign troops, of ships too close to the shore. Radio hosts alternated between music and urgent discussions about sovereignty. Traoré convened his regional allies on a secure video link. The presidents of Mali and Niger appeared on split screens, their faces serious. "They are probing, not attacking," said the Malian leader. "But probing is how wars start." Traoré's reply was measured but unyielding, "Then our answer must be unity, not panic. We will not scatter. We will hold our ground. And if they choose to take that first step onto our field, they must know, there is no retreat for them either." In the coastal waters, a small fishing vessel passed within visual range of the destroyers. A deckhand lifted a phone and live-streamed the hulking silhouettes. Within hours, the footage went viral across Africa, framed with captions, "They're already here." The next move was inevitable. The only question was, whose it would be. The footage of the destroyers rippled through social media like wildfire. By noon, every café, bus stop, and marketplace had at least one phone playing the grainy video of steel giants on the horizon. For many, it was a reminder of history, ships arriving not as guests, but as the first wave of control. In the White House Situation Room, advisors debated the leak. Some demanded the footage be dismissed as misinformation, others pushed for open acknowledgement, claiming it would show strength. Trump leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. "We don't deny, we dictate. If they want to make this a spectacle, we'll give them one." In Ouagadougou, Traoré called an emergency public address. Standing before a crowd in Independence Square, flanked by his defense minister and regional commanders, he spoke directly, his voice carrying through the hot Sahel air. "They think they can intimidate us with their steel. But steel rusts. The will of a people does not. We will not be baited into their timing. But if they cross into our soil, into our homes, then they will find that this field belongs to us." The crowd erupted in chants, waving flags of Burkina Faso alongside those of Mali and Niger. News outlets across Africa carried the speech live, framing it as a moment of defiance that could mark a turning point for the region. That night, a new intelligence report arrived. The convoy inland had begun constructing makeshift fortifications near the border. Drone images showed floodlights and heavy equipment, not the behavior of a force simply passing through. Traoré studied the images in silence. Then he gave a single order to his chief of staff: prepare the red line brief. Every unit must know exactly where it is and what crossing it means. Somewhere in the Gulf, a destroyer's captain received fresh orders. The prow turned slowly toward the shore. The clock was no longer ticking quietly, it was pounding. By morning, the red line brief had reached every unit in Burkina Faso's defense network. Printed maps marked with bold crimson arcs were tacked onto barrack walls, village halls, and regional command tents. The message was clear: any hostile force crossing those lines would be treated as an invader. No exceptions. In the presidential compound, Traoré met with his intelligence council. Satellite feeds displayed the convoy's position, still fortified, still unmoving, but now accompanied by unmarked helicopters. "They're waiting for a trigger," his defense minister said. Traoré shook his head. "No. They're hoping we make the first move, so they can own the story." Meanwhile, in Washington, Trump authorized a demonstration exercise just miles from the Burkina border. Official statements described it as routine, but the sheer number of assets told another story. Tanks rolled over dusty plains, combat aircraft streaked the skies, and ground troops conducted mock assaults in full view of the satellites they knew Traoré was watching. African news networks carried split screens, one side showing the drills, the other showing Burkina Faso's farmers harvesting under the sun, as if daring the world to see which image carried more power. Late that afternoon, a strange message began circulating on encrypted channels used by Allied military forces: "The Eagle will land in 72 hours." Analysts scrambled to interpret whether it was a bluff, a misdirection, or an outright countdown. In a private meeting with his closest advisors, Traoré was calm but deliberate. "If they mean to land, they will find us not as scattered pieces, but as one body. Every field, every street, every riverbank will be theirs to cross, and ours to defend." In the markets that evening, people spoke of the 72 hours in hushed tones. Yet there was no fear in their eyes, only the steady, unshaken readiness of a nation that had already decided it would not kneel. The countdown had shifted the air in the capital. Every hour now felt sharper, more deliberate. Civil defense teams ran drills in neighborhoods, marking safe zones and distributing emergency supplies. Radio hosts alternated between music and updates, weaving in reminders of resilience. The phrase, "Step onto the field," was now painted across walls in bold red letters, almost like a dare. In Washington, Trump's War Council finalized Operation Forward Grip. The plan was simple on paper: land a small but heavily armed force in a neutralized zone, establish a forward operating base, and force Traoré to either engage or appear passive. "He'll have to choose between looking weak or starting a fight," one strategist said. Trump nodded. "Either way, we win the optics." Traoré, however, was already 2 moves ahead. Through discreet channels, he'd secured commitments from regional partners to converge silently near potential landing points. Mali's mobile artillery units repositioned under the cover of night, while Niger's drone fleet widened its patrol arcs. All without public fanfare. The intelligence update at 3 o'clock confirmed the worst: one destroyer had lowered smaller landing crafts into the water. They were still kilometers offshore, but closing. Traoré stood over the operations table, his palm resting on the map. "Let them come," he said, his voice low. "If they set foot here, the world will see who begins this." International media smelled the escalation. Newsrooms from Al Jazeera to Reuters ran breaking banners: 72 hours to confrontation in West Africa. Social feeds exploded with speculation, some hailing Traoré's stance as historic, others warning it was reckless. By dusk, the horizon over the Gulf was lit with the faint silhouettes of approaching craft. Burkina's coastal observers radioed in multiple fast movers. 24 personnel carriers. In Ouagadougou, the call to prayer echoed once more, steady against the rising sound of an incoming storm, whether of weather or war, no one could yet say. The night before the deadline was tense, but eerily calm. In the presidential compound, Traoré walked the dimly lit corridors, stopping at the operations room where screens glowed with live feeds from the coast. Small landing craft, no longer mere silhouettes, now cut deliberate paths through dark waters, their wakes sharp against the moonlight. On the opposite side of the ocean, Trump held a press briefing. "With cameras rolling," he said, "we've warned them. We've given them a choice. If they don't back down, we'll do what we must to secure stability." The words were polished, but his grin betrayed the relish of a man who wanted to win on his terms. In Ouagadougou, a different scene unfolded. Across the city, civilians gathered in community halls to hear defense updates. Leaders reassured them, "This is not a war yet. But if they cross our line, every citizen will know what to do. Volunteers registered to join auxiliary defense units. Mechanics continued converting civilian trucks into mobile barricades. As midnight neared, regional allies confirmed their positions. Malian artillery units were in place, their barrels angled low. Niger's drones circled silently, their night vision optics tracking every movement along the shore. Communications were tight, secure, any leak could give away the trap being set. At 1:15, a coded message came from the coastal watch, Eagle within reach. On the radar, the landing craft formed a staggered approach pattern. It was no exercise now. Traoré placed both hands on the table, scanning the room of commanders. Remember this, the first shot is not ours. But the first step they take onto our soil will be the last one they take without resistance. Outside, the wind carried the scent of the ocean far inland. Somewhere beyond the horizon, steel and wool were on a collision course. Dawn broke over the gulf, turning the water a harsh, metallic silver. The landing craft were now close enough that coastal observers could make out the shapes of armored vehicles within them. Engines roared against the morning air, a sound that reached the nearby fishing villages and sent ripples of unease through the crowd gathering on the shore. On the command balcony in Ouagadougou, Traoré stood in full uniform, his gaze fixed on the live feed streaming from the coast. His radio crackled, foreign craft approaching the red line. 50 meters out. He took a slow breath. Hold your position. Let the cameras see everything. The world was indeed watching. Every major news outlet had gone live, split-screening the approach of the landing forces with the tense stillness of Burkina Faso's defenders. In capitals across Africa, citizens watched from bars, bus terminals, and home screens, murmuring prayers or clenched in silence. At 40 meters, the first craft adjusted its course, aiming directly at the designated no-entry zone. Allied forces from Mali and Niger, hidden beyond the ridges, shifted their positions but did not fire. The red line was now visible to both sides, painted boldly on the sand. Trump, watching from a secure operations center, leaned forward. This is it. They'll flinch. But Traoré didn't move. Neither did his soldiers. Then it happened. One craft crossed the red line by a single meter, its armored ramp lowering onto the sand. The sound of the metal hitting the beach echoed through the live feed. Traoré's voice came over the radio, firm and unwavering, "Mark this moment. They've stepped onto the field." And with that, the first line of defense moved into position, not firing, not retreating, but locking shields and standing so the world could see that the ground they defended was not just territory, but the living will of a people unwilling to bow. Today, the world witnessed more than a border being tested, it saw a people stand unshaken. Power is not in the size of a fleet or the roar of engines, it is in the hearts that refuse to yield. They crossed our line thinking we would break. But lines drawn in courage cannot be erased by fear. We do not fight because we love war, we stand because we love our freedom. And freedom is not given, it is defended, step by step, field by field. To those who would challenge us, remember this, we are not waiting for your permission to exist. We have already claimed our right to stand. If you come here seeking submission, you will find only resistance. If you come seeking to own what is not yours, you will leave empty-handed. For this land, this people, and this future belong not to those who threaten it, but to those who will defend it, together, without hesitation, until the very last breath.